Say ah. Hi, my name is Yana. I'm a modern ajumma. I'm wearing glasses today. I really hope that the glare isn't so bad. It's a tag video. I was tagged by Kat. Kat's Field Notes. Thank you. And yeah, I've been trying to be better about saying whether I actually recommend versus not recommend books in my wrap up. So this should be a good all-in-one video for books that I recommend. I also realized that this could be great questions for a 1K Q&A, which I don't even want to think about. I've always been and will be a small group person, so having over 800 subs is kind of scary. Number 1, a book that I tell everybody is my favorite. Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. I'm a classics gal. I've always been, and it's really only during this booktube phase where I've been like dazzled by the new and contemporary sexy lit fic. I grew up reading Little Women, and this would actually be my desert island kind of book. There are so many stories within the novel. I think that if you haven't read Little Women, I'm pretty sure everybody knows that it's about this family of 4 sisters and them growing up into the adults that they become. But within that main premise, there are so many little stories following each of the sisters, the mom, Lori, and they all kind of stay within the main themes of staying true to yourself, struggling with your flaws, practicing compassion, perseverance, patience. This is wholesome as grain. It kind of feels like slipping on flannel at the first sign of frost. I always would reread this as soon as the holiday times hit. It's so comforting, really cozy. This was my annual holiday reread during my teens and 20s. I wanted to be Jo March growing up, but I think I ended up more like Amy. And I love both the 90s and the 2019 movie adaptations. And while I think that Greta Gerwig's feels more true to the text, and also it has Louis Garrel, while that one feels more true in spirit, I cried my eyeballs out. I just grew up watching the 90s one with Winona Ryder. And while I do think it's very miscast, the vibes and the aesthetics are just 100. Number 2, a book that is my guilty pleasure, Bridget Jones' Diary by Helen Fielding. This is Gen X fun where you just worry about a guy and your weight and clothes and food and first world problems. This is just shooting the shit with your friends, drinking too much Chardonnay, a lot of family drama, getting dumped, feeling like you aren't where you're supposed to be at this age. This is so relatable, comforting, fantasy indulging. To me, this is the definition of a guilty pleasure. And I love the epistolary format with calorie and cigarette tracking and mood checks. Number 3, a book that everybody else loved, but I didn't. You knew that I would pull up this bitch. To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf. I really hate when people rag on things when they just don't get it. And I generally think that if there are enough people who think if something is great, then it probably is. Like, who am I to tell them that they're all wrong? No. Like, no question mark, period. But for Virginia Woolf across the whole, there's something about her that just rubs me so wrong. And I want to say, I just don't get it. It goes over my head. But this is like innate territory. We are oil and water. And I picked To the Lighthouse especially because while I haven't read The Waves, for example, or Jacob's Room, which I feel like To the Lighthouse is a prime example of the embodiment of her, like her prose, her motifs, the essence of Virginia Woolf seems to be encased best in To the Lighthouse. And if my suspicions are true, then I really don't think that I'm a Virginia Woolf girl, because not only do I de-gaff about her issues and find her prose boring, I also just inherently disagree with her whole mindset. I don't remember when I read this, but I'll try to find the wrap-up video where I read this and talk about it more in the description box below. Number 4, a book I read the fastest. Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. But also, like, what does this mean? A page turner? An easy read? A slim book? This may be 300 pages, but it is a fast read, and it does meet all of that criteria. And also, to be honest, I often find skinnier books to be quite dense and a slower pace with like maybe more big ideas for your brain to chew on. But I ate this up. I loved it so much. It's so entertaining, so much romance, sex, feelings getting hurt, complicated relationships, mommy issues, food issues. Very digestible, fun, easy without sacrificing any quality. I love Melissa Broder. I loved the ending and thought it was perfectly right and realistic for this world. Yeah, I think I cried a little too at the end. Number 5, a book that deserves more hype. Howard Stern Comes Again by Howard Stern. I don't know what exactly people thought of him at the height of his fame, because for once I'm too young for... I'm a little too young for this demographic. And also I was alive at his heyday, but I wasn't one of his core demographics. Yeah, not that old, alas. But I saw his Stephen Colbert interview, and it made me literally run out to go get this book, which I bought at Costco. And I was utterly moved by his humanity, his gentleness, his spirit. He's famous for his shock jock raunch, but he is absolutely, most definitely not vicious in any way. He's not out to hurt people. He's flawed and working through it via psychotherapy. And this is an absolute Bible of celebrity interviews and stories. And I love that. I love that. Yeah, he's such a great interviewer and really gets people to open up. This is just a great book of pop culture with equal parts lulls and inspiration. Number 6, a book that is becoming a movie/TV show. The Overstory by Richard Powers. This is currently in development hell, from what I can glean, because it's being helmed by the Game of Thrones showrunners with Hugh Jackman for Netflix as a series. From all the celebrity books I read and all the celeb goss, I gather that this happens a lot. There's a lot of like stars having to align. And of course, I'm sure that there's more of a stall considering the showrunners and their dramas. So yeah, I'm not thrilled. This book deserves so much better. I love this book. It's one of my favorite books of all time. When I read this, George, leave Feist alone. Yeah, I feel like I'm constantly chasing the feels from other books that this book gave me. To me, this book is not at all showy, which a show like Game of Thrones would imply, but I kind of see why they would fit making this, because it is quite adventurous and there is a lot of gravitas involved. So when/if this ever happens, I expect nothing short of Emmy and Golden Globe Best Drama Series and Actor nominations, like all of the best acting categories. I want a high likelihood of a sweep. Celeb goss drama during production would be a plus. And it would just be a death by 100 cuts if this were to be finally made and quickly ignored. Number 7, a book that I've reread the most. Barefoot Contessa Parties by Ina Garten. I own all of her books, but this is definitely one of my favorites, if not at the top of the list. My go-to for both recipes and the vibes. I just want regular life to be a big dinner party. I've owned this book since 2001, when I was 15, so I've spent over 20 years of my life with this. And this is the book with her chocolate chip cookies. The recipe I've been using this entire time. And again, with Barefoot Contessa books, you look through them and see the food, and you think they're so commonplace, like asparagus with very soft scrambled eggs and Parmesan. pasta pesto salad with peas, afternoon tea. But to this ajumma who grew up as a low middle class immigrant child, learning about these foods and meals and experiences felt transcendent, aspirational. This book is so worn out considering how carefully I've used it with 0 food smudges or stains. It's a classic. Number 8, a book from a genre I don't typically read. I'm Waiting for You and Other Stories by Kim Bo-young. And I'm cheating a little bit because I'm adding On the Origin of, do you see that? On the Origin of Species and Other Stories, Kim Bo-young. I think I read these back to back, and so in my brain I still think of these 2 books kind of as the same. Like the voice is the same, the stories are very similar. I can't quite remember which stories were in which book, but they're both so striking, both in looks and what's inside. Yeah, I generally don't read sci-fi, but these took me out and advocated why I should. Like the writerly prose, the ephemeral tone, the heart aching, the mysteries of life. Just one of those books that leave you feeling like it shot a hole through your body, leaving you feeling empty, bereft, feeling so much woe. Number 9, a book that deserves all the hype it gets. The Neapolitan Quartet. These are 4 big books. You're drowning in female rage and sorrow. Big cast of characters, lots of names. We're in post-war Italy. I'm the first to hate on the slow start, but it picks up, gets so good at the end. Like, it's a lot to ask. I get it. But once you're in it, you're in it. And there's nothing else. There's nothing else but this. You will audibly gasp, scream, slap the book for the hurt it caused you, pry into its pages screaming out obscenities, and after it's over, you will be flabbergasted and want to go straight back to the ride to relive it all over again. And I read these books last year, 2 years ago, and I never even included it in any of my wrap-ups because I intended to just make one entire Elena Ferrante video, which I never got around to. I never found the time for. I need to rectify that. So I'm probably gonna do like a reread video. And I'm saying this even though I'm still needing to edit my War and Peace vlog video from February. Number 10, a book I usually recommend when asked for one. East of Eden by John Steinbeck. The great American novel is alive in this one. I've said in previous videos, and I do recommend A Manual for Cleaning Women by Lucia Berlin, but if the person asking is a literary type. But if it's in a more general, broad sense, then I say East of Eden, because this has something for everyone. It is a solid tome. There's grandeur and grit. There are remarkable, memorable characters, and bad things happen to them. Tons of heartache. This puts you through the ringer. It's hard but fun to read. Yeah, it's truly amazing. Number 11, a book with your favorite character. Nemesis by Agatha Christie. Karen or not, I love Jane Marple. This is one of the later Marples when Agatha Christie and Jane Marple are both very old, like older, feeling more helpless than usual, but still tries to help. She goes on a bus tour looking at old churches and gardens in remote villages, which is just like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be a retiree in England. But my favorite aspect of Jane Marple is that she firmly belongs in a place that's hers. She's from there. Everybody knows her name and who she is. She's an essential part of her community. I had a happy childhood, but community-wise, it was kind of unstable. Like, I moved around schools a lot. My identity felt like such a question mark. People didn't even say my name right. And I still feel pangs of jealousy for people both IRL and fictional who are such staunch members of their community. Like, it's really such a privilege and an honor to be able to have that in your life. I had an art professor who was like a third generation Japanese American in Southern California, whose parents were artists and community leaders. And I literally felt like I met a unicorn. And Jane Marple is one of those characters who just feels so solid, Community is a huge aspect of her personality and her character. If I were to pick like a favorite trope of mine, it would be that sense of community in a world within the character. And I picked Nemesis because the plot itself doesn't even take place in her own village, which a lot of Miss Marple books have. So this is a little bit out of the ordinary. Nevertheless, her sense of self is still strong and she applies that community building wherever she goes. I really like this one. This one is one of the creepier ones too. One of the creepier Agatha Christie's. Number 12, a book I wish I could live in. Nana by Ai Yazawa. Nana is a series, one of 22, 21, but to be in your early 20s, young, carefree, full of life's potential, falling in love with every decent thing that you see, roommates who become your BFFs, and share meals with, feeling the roller coaster of heartbreaks, and despite the pain, knowing that you're still strong and have enough vitality to recover and find someone after. Kind of feels like Friends season 1, where you're all broke, work sucks, but there's always each other to come home to at the end of the day, and it's you and your friends talking and hanging out. And life feels so mundane and at a plateau, and nothing's gonna happen to you anytime soon, and you want to get going with the rest of your life. But that is such a special time in a person's life if you're lucky enough to have it, if you're lucky enough to have had it at all. Number 13, a book I thought I'd hate, but ended up loving. The Sense of an Ending by Julian Barnes. I mean, the main character is such a man. He's priggish, he's British, he's uptight, not necessarily likable, but Julian Barnes's writing kept me intrigued enough. Also, the slim size intrigued me enough to continue. It's that feeling where you're being led along past all the clues and characters, and by the time the ending comes, I was left stunned. Like, the ending was so abrupt and everything kind of fell into place. There's a film adaptation. I had to watch it. Like, it has a great cast of British actors in this film too. And every actor's memorable portrayal of each character captures the vibes completely. Number 14, a book that made me cry. Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason. Her relationship with her partner, their history, his support and what that support looks like, the culmination of her burning through every bridge, every single friend and family who made up her support system, and finally owning her situation. Oh, this was such a major hailstorm of snot and tears and drool. This was the one book that I read and then reread within the same year. I absolutely loved it. It's one of my favorite books. And yes, it's fun to read, despite all the tears. Maybe the tears actually make it more fun to read. Number 15, a book I wish I could read for the first time. A lot of books could fit into this category. I've often thought long and hard of that, real TikTok idea. Maybe I'll still do one, but for now, The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. I recall going into this with high expectations, having heard so much about it, so much hype for this book from both old and young. Like, everybody loves this book, everybody says great things about this book, and I was still delightfully surprised and wowed by Madeline Miller's prose and direction and world building, making familiar characters feel like new and unknown or lesser known characters, and obscure details from like the depths of my memory of Greek mythology feel so natural. And to feel the feels for the first time again reading this book. Oh my god. My heart. This broke my heart and patched it up again, and I still think that I prefer Circe over this one, but this was my first Madeline Miller, and it's really neck and neck, those two books. Absolutely love. Yeah, I love all of these books, and I recommend all of them wholeheartedly. I'm still trying with Virginia Woolf, but even though I disagree with her, I'm still enjoying being part of it and seeing what the hype is about and hyping up other books that I love, that I've known and loved, whether it's been for years or recent reads, that I want to shout from the rooftops to tell you to, check it out maybe, see if you like it. But my point is, whether you love a book or hate it, books are so fun to talk about. I hope you're always reading something interesting and that you have a great time talking about it with people in your life. Thanks for watching.